Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another special episode. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by my friend, Dr. Afolabi-Brown, who's going to talk to us about her story. Funke, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So you are achievement-oriented. I'm going to let you do your own bio. I ultimately got double board certified, but you got triple board certified, which means you're paying all those expenses now. But tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and then we'll get into your story.
Yeah. So I started off, I went to medical school in Nigeria and I did my training there. I came to the US, maybe 17 years ago now. And then I did my pediatric residency. And then after that, I took a year off to do a research fellowship. And then I went in to explore pediatric pulmonology as a fellowship I really loved physiology and all that. After that, I worked as an attending and doing all the good stuff. And then I started really leaning towards sleep again, because I was seeing a lot of sleep issues emerge, even from pulmonary diseases and also from my own story and experience. I really got interested. So I did one more year of pulmonary sleep medicine fellowship. and that's really been my focus now.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me that with pulmonary, there's this fellowship of a fellowship, right, where we can add sleep to it. Yeah. It's really interesting, but that's a good jump off into sharing a little bit about your story. We always share stories of burnout, challenge, overwhelm, difficulty, because in medicine, we're so inclined to keep those stories silent. And this is really the place where we come together and say, no, it has been hard. I have been struggling. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I felt like I burnt out before I even knew what burnout meant. I walked into burnout, I guess. I mean, I think from the training, the rigorous training I had in Nigeria, it was intense. It was not for the faint-hearted. It was a place where, sleep was definitely for suckers. If you slept, if you snooze, you lose. I think that's where it came from. Like, you sleep when you're dead. It was there every day staring me in the face. And so I already had a tendency towards insomnia. I already did, because I was kind of a little bit wound up tight. I was already a little bit of type A. I was already that kind of person, a go-getter. And so when you combine someone with those tendencies with an environment that supports that kind of tendency,
not just supports, martyrizes, right?
Exactly, right? And it was a survival of the fittest. It was almost like, and I'm sure even here, it was almost like you failed until proven otherwise when you step into medical school, right? So I was burning the candle on both ends, and I was trying to do the best I could, and I was exhausted all the time. And so I brought all that exhaustion into the US. And throughout my entire training, it was the same. I did night shifts. I could barely get it through. I did, I did it. And then my kids came into the picture. And so here I am combining sleep deprivation with insomnia, with
mom sleep.
So I was, the candle was burnt both ends, and I just was like just one big flame, right? So I then had to hit a pause button and say, okay, this is not compatible with any long-term sustainable plan. And so I really started to make a shift. And I wanted to start with low-hanging fruit, like, where am I suffering the most? And that was the fact that I was in a constant fog because I was so exhausted. Yeah. And so I really started to set boundaries around sleep, started to really make it a thing. And I saw the anxiety, the overwhelm, it actually started to improve. Now, it didn't fix it all, but it helped me. I wish it did.
Wouldn't that be lovely? It would just fix our sleep and then we don't worry anymore.
Everything is fine. But fixing that provided me with the clarity I needed to then start to take care of myself. Because when you're in it so deep and enmeshed, you just couldn't see a way out. So
I'm curious, where in your training was this going on? Was this before you did the sleep fellowship?
It was.
It was.
It was before. And so so that just really started to provide me with, okay, I'm not going to die. Because right there, when you're in it, you just feel like there's no way this is, Yeah. And so after doing that, and then getting work on my mind, getting some therapy, all that, I really saw how life-changing those tools were. That now, by the time I was done with my pulmonary fellowship and was already as an attending, I felt it was worth the investment to go back, because of course you're taking a pay cut when you go back to fellowship from being an attending.
You're working maybe more hours, maybe not. I don't know.
It was just a lot, but I really could see the benefit, because I said, people don't know this at all. And I don't have the cure for burnout, but I have a tool that can help on the way. And I'm going to use science and the knowledge and the expertise, as well as my own experience, to help others live better lives. And then I think another thing that motivated me towards that was in my practice, right? My clinical practice was filled with kids who were sleep deprived and their parents who were sleep deprived. And I was hearing my relationships were broken. Parents and moms were shadows of themselves. And that really gravitated me towards helping professional women. These were women that I could see myself in them. And so I think it was that combination that then motivated me to start my business and then eventually my practice.
Yeah. Well, it's such a theme that I hear with many of the guests on this show of we go into medicine, right? We have a goal. We're going to help people. We're going to do this thing. And then we see elements in our own lives, or we see parts of medicine that are sort of failing. So for example, as a child sleep specialist, you can help the kids. That's who the insurance model pays for. That is the individual who, quote unquote, directly benefits from your work.
Yeah.
But you could see, and you had the personal experience of, no, moms too, and parents and dads and other caregivers too. The adults were also suffering in the family. And our current medical model only allows us to take care of one person unless there is a fetus uterus. That's the only time we get to take care of two people at the same time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit then, as you are working with kids and you're able to do some spillover into moms, but not really directly. What was going on with your thought process at that time? Because you were getting ideas. I know this.
Yes. So I was in academic medicine, right? So I was doing the things, I was helping the kids. And I was, at that time, even within the constraints, I was teaching, I was helping to at least provide some information to the mom. Because for me, my philosophy was, even if I give you this long list of what to do with your child's sleep, if you're too tired to implement it, I have failed, right? And that was exactly what was going on. Because there are some things we need to do as parents that may require discomfort on our side and also on our kids' side. And for you to experience that discomfort and come out of it and have the motivation and the insight to carry it out effectively, you need to have some form of resilience. And resilience does not work well in the state of sleep deprivation. So
True.
I really needed to make sure that I got my moms on the same page. And so I was offering some tips. But like you said, in a 30-minute visit, like, my goodness, I'm done talking with the child, getting the child history, and it's time for the next appointment, right? So I think that was really where the restlessness around the current model came from. I want to help these people, again, the empathy from being in that state as well. When I spoke with those moms and they said things like, I remember one very clearly, and I think that was just the breaking point for me, where the mom came in, beautiful, put together. She was a lawyer. It was perfect. She looked like she was stepping out of a magazine, and her child had sleep issues, but it was a child with special needs. I just got through that wall, just helped her, just the wall came down when she really saw how connected I was with helping. And she said her husband walked out on them that day, right? That morning. You would never have known.
Never have known. Yeah.
We put on that mask. And for me, I just could see literally how sleep could impact so many multiple dimensions of a person's life. And I just was like, well, I got to get out of this four walls of one-to-one, seeing the patient just within that insurance care model, to really stepping out and saying, what would it look like if I was to approach this from not just one child, but like child who is in a community, child who comes in with a mom. And really, I think that was where things started to evolve.
Yeah. I think, again, it's so interesting. And I happen to see more women physicians doing this, right? Seeing that the current model, the way that medical care is set up, the way appointments are set up to be very cookie cutter, and us noticing this is not the way that I want to serve people. I can see these needs here, 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 and here. But within the confines of the four walls, as you said, there's not a lot of options. And so you and I know many women physicians who are now going out and figuring out, how can I do this better? How am I going to break through these walls? But I love in your story, the particular challenge of leaving academic medicine to do something on your own, which we'll hear more about. Not having come from an academic background, that seems extraordinary to me, because when I talk to academic physicians, there's so much pressure to stay in the box, right? You need to not alienate people. You can't be special. And those elements exist in employed practice as well, but they're extra in academics. So talk to us a little bit about kind of that part of it as you're considering, I want to do something else, but you're sitting in this particular flavor of box.
You just hit the nail right on the head. And that was a struggle. And I think it took a while first to get over the mindset, because I realized I had been defined by my accomplishments within the context of academia. So let that go for something that I knew I had a gut feeling. I knew there was a need for it. I knew I would be successful, but I had no clue what that journey or that path would look like. And so leaving the comfort and the certainty and the trajectory that I was on to just jump out and say, I'm opening a shop.
Yeah. Well, and that the academic track is fairly defined, right? Yeah. We move up the ladder in a certain way. There's a professorship tenure sort of track, however that looks in your institution. There's publication. There might be all sorts of manner of things. Yeah. You kind of know what that looks like, right? Yeah. And when we jump into doing something on our own, we don't know what that path looks like.
No. Yeah. So I think that was the scary part. But I looked at the cost of not taking action versus taking action and telling my beautiful mind that was extremely scared that, okay, worst case scenario, you'll come back. Okay. That's it. But of course, you're not going to come back because this is going to succeed, right? So
we're going to soothe you over here by saying we can always get this job again.
And that was it. And I made sure I didn't burn any bridges, because I knew that one of the things I've loved to do is teach. Again, I'm leaving academia, which is full of professional, burnt out women, again, right, with their kids. And so I really didn't want to leave burning any bridges. So we left on beautiful, pleasant terms. And I think that has really paid off because of the different things I've been able to accomplish. Now I'm being asked to return in a capacity to help foster a sleep coaching program for trainees, right? So it's opening up new doors for me, which I'm really excited about. So, and I think that's the thing. It was scary. I didn't know how it would play out, but I just kind of obeyed, and I still took action in spite of the fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really important to highlight, right? Is that it's not that you weren't afraid. It's not that you had a clear path laid out. It's you decided and really engaged with that sense of self-confidence, right? Knowing that you had your own back. You could figure it out. You could return to a job if you needed to, but that you were pretty sure you weren't going to. You're betting on yourself there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, you made the decision to leave and you knew that you were going to do something on your own. How did you start to figure out what that was going to look like?
So honestly, I had started a lot of the work even before I left and made that transition. And one of the things I knew was, okay, let me start with where I am and what I have. And what I had was the ability to communicate medical information and science in a way that's relatable. Yeah. And so I really just started speaking on different platforms. I started hosting webinars. And as I did that, the next step was, okay, I finished taking these people through this incredible journey of what their life would look like after they get sleep. And then I'm like, okay, so yeah, sleep well. So I think that it was organic. It was more of them people saying, okay, so what next? And then I started doing coaching, which was some of what I was already practicing even when I was employed, right? Yeah. And so I started to speak and also do coaching and consulting. And so that was great because with coaching, the guidelines are a little different because you're not limited by things that that. So that really gave me the freedom and the flexibility to reach as many people as I could as wanted to work with me. Yeah. But then I said, okay, now what? Because I started to get into spaces where I knew there would be a conflict between being employed in academia and maybe some of the organizations that wanted to work with me and things like that. And so I started to feel a misalignment. And that was when I knew it was time to go.
Yeah. Because you had some really exciting projects. And just remembering now, speaking all over the place, working with Baby Center.
Yeah.
I mean, some really big deal sort of things. And I could see how that might start to create tension, right? Because the academic center, I don't know if there was any pressure there, but they, of course, want you to work. They want you to gain notoriety and get your name out there, but only if you're sort of pulling them with you.
And that was it. So I couldn't fully represent myself incorporated. There had to be that attachment, which I really wanted to be able to. Again, remember I'd said I'd previously just defined myself by what I was doing within the context of the institution. And I knew it was time for me to find a whole different set of definitions for who I was and who I represented. Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about the things that you're doing now, because I know that you're doing a variety of different things, and it sounds like we've got some new opportunities coming your way, which is exciting too. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so this has really been an incredible journey, and there's been evolution, but it all aligns in a very beautiful way for me. So, of course, the speaking helps me to use platforms to get outside of either the four walls of an exam room, right? Mm-hmm. With the coaching, a lot of things I'm realizing is, while it might feel like a sleep issue, and I think I've told you before, many times it's either a boundaries or mindset issue. So a lot of the work I do with coaching with women is around that. What does time management look like? What does parenting and boundaries around parenting, around your workplace, around things like that look like? And so we usually look at sleep in the context of everything that's going on during the day. And then the beautiful thing was I love clinical medicine, right? So clinical sleep medicine has always been my passion. And I have a unique gift, which is pediatric sleep medicine, which there's just not many of us that exist on the planet that do that work. And so that really gave me an opportunity to open up my own clinic. So I would call it more like a boutique style, smaller number private practice, where then I'm able to close that loop, because there are women that I coach that are like, well, now my sleep is better, or what is getting in my way of sleep is my child's sleep. And so then I can walk them through my practice to say, okay, let's see what's going on. Is it sleep apnea? Is it a medical sleep issue? Is it sleep training, or whatever that looks like? So it's kind of like full circle right now. And so I would say that those main arms, it's kind of like the coaching and consulting, and then my clinical practice.
Yeah. And I actually don't know the answer to this. Is a cash pay practice, correct?
Yes, it is a cash pay practice. We are in network with maybe couple of insurances, but it's mainly cash pay.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think what I like to highlight for people kind of thinking about this question, because it's a hard question that people have to answer if they're going out on their own, is I'm going to be cash pay or I'm going to be insurance based. There can be a little bit more flexibility when we're cash pay because we can still do medical work, but you're not reliant necessarily on the perfect diagnosis in order to be reimbursed by the insurance companies, who get really picky. In the obesity world, for example, I can't code obesity and BMI as my primary codes. I won't get paid by the insurance companies to do that. I have to tag something else to it, such as abnormal weight gain or prediabetes or something to justify. And I imagine that might happen as well with sleep medicine, especially if it's more parenting, more sleep training, right? We don't necessarily have a perfect ICD-10 code to put in there. Yeah. But when we're thinking about our model and what we actually want to do and serve the flexibility we want, a cash pay option makes a lot of sense there.
I could not agree more. And like you said, some of these things, it's almost like almost intangible. And my visits can take anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes because of that.
Yeah.
And so the insurance doesn't understand that woman is looking to feel heard. And sometimes maybe just to strategize, okay, how do we do meal planning so that you're not in the kitchen all night long, so that you can have time to put this child to bed who is having a lot of bedtime resistance.
Yeah.
But you can't document that in a way that the insurance understands it. And I think that's the beauty of having this model is I can practice medicine in a way that feels true to me and aligns with my values, and also in a way that I feel that I'm actually effectively serving these parents and this moms who are just completely overwhelmed and they've been told to do blood tests and everything else is sort of normal, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's the very real struggle that I see so many women physicians get into, and likely my male colleagues as well, but where we've got a medical issue going on, plus a concern, but also, yes, there are these lifestyle, there are these behavioral things, and we have the choice of either engaging with that and running really behind and probably undercoding and kind of all of those things in service of these families, or we only stick to kind of the medical stuff and we just kind of dismiss people, and then our patients don't feel heard, which is just not the way that most of us want to serve people. It's part of the moral injury of feeling like I can't be effective if I can't talk about these things, but there's no time, right? There's no code I can use. I can't justify it to my clinic. Such a struggle. Well, so talk to us a little bit about, for somebody who is hearing your story and thinking, that's interesting, I wonder if I could do that. But they're still in that phase of feeling so much fear and anxiety and just uncertainty about what might be out there. What would you like them to know?
I would start by saying, sleep on it.
Should have seen that one coming.
No, but seriously, I think you have to go back to it. It's so funny. I do the values work as part of my coaching too. And it's really going back to saying, okay, what are my core values? What are the things that really matter to me? And really be able to bet on yourself. Like, I am worthy of being someone who creates a life that is aligned with these values.
Yes.
You have to start with that work. Otherwise, you will not feel like you deserve it. You will not have the confidence to bet on yourself. You can't. Because if your values are all over the place and you don't honor your values, then nobody will. And so it's going to come with that. And it's going to come also with just being patient with yourself, right? You don't have to jump out right away. For me, I made a decision I was going to leave, but I put things in place and I ended up not leaving for probably a year and a half of making that decision, right? So it doesn't have to be tomorrow. And so there are things there's some work you may need to do. There's some groundwork, there's some research, there's mentorship, coaching that you need to do so you feel confident enough to be able to make that decision.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because that's a bit of my story as well. And I'm wondering what sorts of things were you putting into place? I know for me, when I made the decision to leave, that's when I added a second board certification quietly, secretly. I switched our insurance over to my husband. Like I was kind of laying this groundwork slowly about a year, honestly, before I left. And we don't usually talk about this, but I think that's important for people to hear. It's very possible. And having that slow, steady plan is quite reasonable, especially for those of us who run a little anxious. So what are some of those tangible things that you were doing kind of in the background?
Yeah, no, I thank you for highlighting that, because I think my fear for many women who are like, I'm ready to go, is that they get all this motivation and then they just jump ship and it's, oh crap. What is
and that's one out. Yeah.
Yeah, and then without a plan, it's 3 months or 4 months later. And then you now jump into a job that you now absolutely hate because you need to, right? So one, I think, is really making sure the financial piece is okay. What would it look like? Just in case, and then depending on what you're opening to do, if you're planning to start a practice like I did, I mean, there's going to be more, you're going to need to rev up in terms of volume, in terms of people knowing what you're doing. You need to make sure, is there a non-compete? So if there is a non-compete, what's my plan around that? Because that means I can't plan.
Is it enforceable?
Is it enforceable?
Because there's a lot of non-competes and they may not be enforceable. And that might be a state issue. I know in the state of Washington, we had a non-compete and it was not enforceable. So that was important for me to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also, like, I was laying the groundwork. For me, I want to use platforms that are big to get my word out. So I was making those connections, right? I was trying to pitch slowly to organizations, right? I was, again, looking at what it looks like. I was doing the coaching. I was already starting, because this was something I knew I could do, because nobody's going to come at me for saying, well, after hours, I speak to a woman who's sleep deprived and exhausted, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a moneymaker for your institution, right?
No, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So I think it was things like that. And yes, switching my insurance to my husband's insurance plan, right? Yeah. The disability, all those things, I started to just shift and make calls. And I took up locums, right? Because I needed to make sure. I feel like sometimes if you're in a business and you're like, oh my goodness, you're tight for money, it creates this scarcity mindset and puts pressure that might make you do what you're doing from a place of desperation. No, I'd never want that. I want to give from a place of abundance, not because oh my goodness, I need you to give me money right away. No, absolutely not. So I really needed to make sure that I had a support system that would support the business. It's almost like a baby, right? I don't expect them to have to run right away. So make sure diapers are in place, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think, that's another important thing that a lot of people share too, of and I'm going to do my own thing. I know that it may not make money right away, and that's okay because I have the ability to make money. I have the ability to do locums. Yeah. I can find ways to make this work and get this up and running. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, so good. I'm glad we took that little departure there. So tell us a little bit now, if people are looking for you and they want to learn more about your work, where can people find you?
Yeah, my website is the best place to start. It has the links to how to get in touch with me. And so they're different. You might be in different scenarios. You might be, again, like I said, a high achieving, busy woman professional who is just burnt all over, like crisp, hard, right? And sleep is an issue. You're getting into bed and you can't turn that mind off. You can't get restful sleep and you're exhausted all the time, and it's affecting everything. So that's a good place. We would definitely be able to work on getting your sleep on track again, so you can have the clarity that I had to be able to now make the right decisions. Or if you have kids who are not sleeping and that's why you're so tired, then we could work together in that coaching capacity. Now, if you are in California, if you are in Pennsylvania or in New Jersey, then my sleep practice, where we actually then delve into more clinical things that might be disrupting your child's sleep or your teenager, your baby, whatever that looks like. That's another way. And then if you work in an organization or an organization that's okay, it seems like they're trying to target fatigue or burnout or things like that, but they're not talking about sleep at all. I bring a different dimension on how we can incorporate really sleep as a means of fatigue mitigation for organizations. Mm-hmm. And so it might be your clinic, it might be your hospital, it might be your residency. And I facilitate those workshops and conferences around that topic. But if you go to my website, you'll get all that information, and then we can
all the information. Yeah, I love that part of it, because I did do physician wellness work, and yeah, the push was always like, let's teach meditation and let's have lunchtime yoga, and that's all very well and good. But when people are overtired and they've got too much work to do, they're not going to squeeze those things in. And yet, yes, the discussion on sleep was, well, sleep's important.
Yeah,
you should sleep. But I love the idea of coaching with someone who knows the work. So if you are a woman physician and you get to coach with another woman physician who specializes in sleep and knows what it's like to be a physician, like what a gift that is, right? Because you're talking to somebody who knows working 30-hour shifts and being on call and being interrupted and all of those really important things that are much more complicated than people who don't have that. They might be parents. Of course, there are things that interrupt our sleep, right? But the uniqueness of physician work, where we've got that pager or our phones that can go off all the time, or working these funky hours, how important that would be to have better success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Funke Afolabi-Brown, thank you so much for joining me. I knew this was going to be a great conversation. I can't wait for everybody to hear it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and for the incredible work you do.
Thank you. All right, everyone. That's what we have for you this week. Be sure to check her out on her website, which is restfulmd.com, correct?
Yeah, restfulsleepmd.com.
Restfulsleepmd.com. All right, we'll have links to that in the show notes. All right, until next time, take care. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.